Get out of my OR now. Dr. Marcus Whitfield's voice cut through the operating room like a scalpel. His blue eyes, visible above his surgical mask, blazed with fury. Jasmine Carter stood her ground, hands still hovering over the instrument tray. Her voice stayed calm, professional. Dr. Whitfield, that's the wrong artery. You're about to— I said out! He pointed to the door with a blood-covered glove. Security, remove this nurse immediately! The patient on the table, 8-year-old Mia Rodriguez, had maybe 90 seconds before irreversible brain damage. Her heart rate was dropping, blood pressure plummeting. The monitors screamed their warnings. Jasmine looked at those monitors, at the scalpel in Whitfield's hand, positioned over the carotid artery instead of the subclavian, at the 12 people in the OR who all saw what was about to happen. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke up. Just another day when a black nurse's expertise meant nothing against a white surgeon's ego. Have you ever watched someone make a fatal mistake and been told to stay silent?
6 hours earlier, Jasmine Carter clocked in at Metropolitan Children's Hospital at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, like always. 28 years old, OR nurse for 6 years, trauma certification, pediatric specialty certification, and a perfect record. Her locker held 3 things: a photo of her grandmother who'd raised her, a worn copy of Gray's Anatomy she'd studied until the pages fell out, and a rejection letter from medical school, the 5th rejection. All said the same thing in different words. Your MCAT scores are excellent, your clinical experience is impressive, but we have limited spaces and must select candidates who best fit our program's culture. Culture meant white, meant money, meant connections. So Jasmine became the best OR nurse she could be, learned every procedure, every complication, every protocol, attended every optional training, volunteered for every difficult case, thought maybe excellence would be enough. It never was. Carter, charge nurse Rebecca Morrison appeared in the doorway. White woman, 50s, been at Metro for 30 years, ran the surgical floor like a military operation. You're on Whitfield's team today, pediatric vascular repair, OR 3. Jasmine's stomach dropped. Rebecca, you know Whitfield and I know you filed a complaint last month, I know he called it frivolous, and I know you need to learn to work with difficult personalities. Rebecca's tone was final. 7 a.m., don't be late. The complaint. 3 weeks ago, Whitfield had left a surgical sponge inside a patient. Standard count protocol required accounting for all materials before closing. Jasmine had noticed the count was off by 1. Whitfield told her to stop wasting everyone's time with paranoid counting. She insisted. He exploded, called her incompetent, disruptive, a diversity hire who doesn't understand surgical flow. The sponge was found during a follow-up scan. The patient needed a second surgery to remove it. Whitfield blamed the surgical tech. The tech was fired. Jasmine's complaint went to HR and died there. Now she was assigned to his team again. Jasmine changed into scrubs, reviewed the case file. Mia Rodriguez, 8 years old, congenital vascular malformation near the subclavian artery, complex surgery, high risk, required precision, Whitfield specialty supposedly. She entered OR 3 at 7:59 a.m. The team was assembling. 2 surgical residents, a surgical tech, an anesthesiologist, 3 other nurses, all white except Jasmine and Dr. Raj Patel, the anesthesiologist. Whitfield swept in at 7:03 a.m. Tall, 50s, silver hair, expensive watch visible under his surgical gown. He commanded the room without saying a word. "Let's make this quick," he announced. "I have a golf game at 2. Jasmine helped prep the patient. Mia looked so small on the adult-sized table. Her mother had kissed her forehead in pre-op, whispering prayers in Spanish. Dr. Patel administered anesthesia. Mia's eyes fluttered closed. Whitfield positioned himself over the surgical site. Jasmine stood across from him, instruments ready. Scalpel,
Whitfield said.
Jasmine handed it to him, handle first, perfect technique. He made the initial incision, clean, confident. The surgery began. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Whitfield was brilliant when he wanted to be. His hands were steady, his technique flawless. The residents watched in awe, taking mental notes. Jasmine stayed focused on the monitors, the instruments, the count, everything by protocol. Then Whitfield reached the critical point. The vascular malformation was near the subclavian artery, the vessel that supplies blood to the arm and brain. One wrong move could cause massive bleeding or stroke. Whitfield studied the anatomy. Jasmine studied it too, cross-referencing with the CT scans displayed on the monitor. "Clamp," Whitfield said. Jasmine handed it to him. He positioned it, and something was wrong. The angle was off. He was approaching from the wrong side. The anatomy on the screen didn't match what he was doing. Jasmine looked closer. Her heart stopped. He was about to clamp the carotid artery instead of the subclavian. The carotid supplied blood to the brain. Clamping it would cut off Mia's brain's blood supply. Within seconds, irreversible damage. Within minutes, death. Jasmine's voice was quiet, respectful. "Dr. Whitfield, I think that's—" "I didn't ask for your input, Nurse Carter." His voice was ice. "But the scan shows—" "Are you a surgeon, Nurse Carter?" "No, but—" "Then be quiet and do your job." The residents looked uncomfortable but said nothing. The surgical tech stared at the floor. Dr. Patel glanced at the monitors, concern flashing across his face. Jasmine looked at the screen again. She wasn't wrong. The anatomy was clear. Carotid artery, not subclavian. "Dr. Whitfield, please look at the scan. The vessel you're approaching is the carotid." "I said be quiet." His voice exploded through the OR. "One more word and you're out of here, permanently." Jasmine's hands shook. Every protocol she'd ever learned screamed at her to speak up. Nurses are the last line of defense. When something's wrong, you say something. But she'd seen what happened to nurses who challenged Whitfield. 3 had been fired in the past 2 years, all for insubordination, all women of color. The clamp was an inch from the artery. Half an inch. Mia's monitors showed stable vitals, for now. Jasmine looked around the OR. Someone else had to see this. Someone else had to speak up. Dr. Patel caught her eye. He'd seen it too, she could tell, but he looked away. The residents were focused on Whitfield's hands, learning, oblivious. Quarter inch. Jasmine made her decision. "Dr. Whitfield, stop!" Her voice rang through the OR, clear and commanding. Whitfield's hand froze. He looked up slowly, eyes blazing above his mask. "What did you just say to me?" "That's the wrong artery. You're about to clamp the carotid. If you do that, Mia will have a stroke. She could die." The OR went completely silent. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. 8 people held their breath. Whitfield's voice was deadly quiet. "Get out of my OR, now. Look at the scan. Out. Security. Remove this nurse immediately." That's when the real fight began. And Jasmine Carter had just made a choice that would either save a child's life or end her career forever.
Security Officer James Morrison appeared in the OR doorway within 30 seconds. Large, professional, hand on his radio. "We have a problem?" he asked. "Remove Nurse Carter," Whitfield said without looking up from the patient. "She's disrupting a surgical procedure. I want her escorted from the building and barred from returning." Jasmine didn't move. "Dr. Whitfield is about to make a fatal error. Someone needs to verify the anatomy before he proceeds." Morrison looked between them, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me." "I'm not leaving this patient." "Ma'am, don't make this harder than—" "Dr. Patel," Jasmine's voice cut through. "You see it too, don't you? Look at the scan and tell me I'm wrong." Dr. Patel's eyes darted between Jasmine and Whitfield. His career versus a child's life. The same calculation Jasmine had just made. I'm focused on anesthesia management," he said quietly. "Surgical decisions are Dr. Whitfield's responsibility." Coward. But Jasmine understood. She'd been a coward too, until 30 seconds ago. One of the residents, Dr. Sarah Chen, stepped forward slightly. "Dr. Whitfield, maybe we should double-check the imaging, just to be certain?" Whitfield's head snapped toward her. "Dr. Chen, are you questioning my surgical judgment?" Sarah's face went pale. "No, sir, I just thought—" "You're not paid to think. You're here to observe and learn. Now step back." Sarah retreated, but Jasmine saw something in her eyes. Doubt. Recognition. The other resident, Dr. Marcus Klein, pulled up the CT scan on his tablet, studying it closely. His eyes widened. "Officer Morrison, remove her now." Morrison moved toward Jasmine. "Ma'am, please don't make me—" Jasmine raised her voice, addressing everyone in the room. "I am invoking patient safety protocol under Hospital Policy 7.3. Any medical staff member who witnesses imminent danger to a patient has the authority and obligation to stop the procedure until the concern is resolved." Whitfield laughed, sharp and cruel. "You're citing policy at me? I helped write that policy." "Then you know I'm within my rights." "You're a nurse. You don't have the medical expertise to make surgical determinations." "I have eyes. I can read a CT scan, and that's the carotid artery." Morrison's radio crackled. A voice. "Security, what's the status?" Before Morrison could answer, Dr. Klein spoke up, his voice shaking. "Dr. Whitfield, I think Nurse Carter might be right." Every head turned. Klein held up his tablet, showing the CT scan. "Look at the branching pattern. That's characteristic of the carotid, not the subclavian. The angle is all wrong for subclavian approach." Whitfield's face went red above his mask. "Dr. Klein, you're a second-year resident. You're barely qualified to hold a retractor, let alone interpret complex vascular imaging." "But, sir, the bifurcation is exactly where I expect it to be." Whitfield grabbed Klein's tablet, glanced at it for 2 seconds, thrust it back. "You're misreading the image. The perspective is distorted by the patient's positioning." Klein looked at the scan again, uncertainty creeping into his expression. Whitfield's confidence was overwhelming, making him doubt what he'd clearly seen. Jasmine watched the manipulation happen in real time. This was Whitfield's power, not just his surgical skill, but his ability to make people doubt themselves, to make them believe that his certainty trumped their evidence. She'd seen him do it dozens of times, watched nurses and residents cave under the weight of his authority. Not today. One of the residents, Dr. Sarah Chen, stepped forward slightly. "Dr. Chen, maybe we should double-check the imaging, just to be certain?" All eyes turned to Sarah Chen. She was the expert here, the one specializing in exactly this type of surgery. If anyone could definitively identify the anatomy, it was her. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up the scan on the main monitor, enlarged it, studied it carefully.
Dr. Whitfield stepped back from the table, his movements sharp and angry. "Dr. Chen, since you're so confident in your assessment, you verify the anatomy. Use the ultrasound." Sarah Chen's hands shook as she picked up the portable ultrasound probe. This was the moment, the objective test that would prove who was right. Jasmine watched as Sarah positioned the probe over the surgical site, adjusted the settings, and studied the screen. The room was silent, except for the monitors and the soft whir of the ultrasound machine. Sarah moved the probe carefully, following the vessel Dr. Whitfield had been about to clamp, tracing it back to its origin, checking the branching pattern, measuring the diameter, cross-referencing with the CT scan. 30 seconds, 45, a full minute. Then Sarah looked up, her face pale above her mask. "It's the carotid artery. Nurse Carter was correct." The OR erupted in chaos.
"That's impossible," Whitfield said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Sarah turned the ultrasound screen so everyone could see. "Look, you can see the bifurcation here. The vessel Dr. Whitfield was approaching is definitely the common carotid. If he'd clamped it, Mia would have had a massive stroke within seconds." Dr. Klein pulled up the CT scan again, comparing it to the ultrasound in real time. "The anatomy is distorted by scar tissue from a previous infection. It's displaced the vessels about 3 centimeters from their normal position. That's why Dr. Whitfield misidentified it." Whitfield grabbed the ultrasound probe, studied the screen himself. His hands were shaking now. Everyone watched as realization crashed over him. He'd been wrong, catastrophically, fatally wrong. And Jasmine Carter, the nurse he'd tried to have removed, had saved him from killing a child. Dr. Patel spoke quietly. "Dr. Whitfield, perhaps Dr. Chen should take over as primary surgeon." It was a gentle suggestion, but the implication was clear. Whitfield could no longer be trusted with this patient's life. Whitfield's ego made one last stand. "Absolutely not. I am perfectly capable of—" "Sir," Jasmine's voice was firm, "you just tried to clamp the wrong artery. Your judgment is compromised. For Mia's safety, you need to step back." "I don't take orders from nurses." Officer Morrison, still standing in the doorway, cleared his throat. "Dr. Whitfield, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the patient. Multiple witnesses have now confirmed a serious error. Hospital policy requires—" "I know what hospital policy requires." Whitfield threw his surgical gloves on the floor. "This is a witch hunt. You're all conspiring against me because I hold you to high standards, because I refuse to let political correctness compromise surgical excellence." "No, sir," Sarah Chen said, her voice steady now. "We're protecting a patient from a surgeon who was about to kill her." Those words landed like a bomb. Whitfield looked around the room. Every face showed the same thing. They agreed with Sarah. He was the danger here, not Jasmine, not the disruptive nurse who dared to question him. Him. "Fine," Whitfield said finally. "Dr. Chen, the procedure is yours. I'll observe." He stepped away from the table, pulled off his surgical gown, and moved to the corner of the OR. But Jasmine could see his face. This wasn't over. He was already planning his revenge. Dr. Chen took his place at the table, took a deep breath, and began the surgery properly. With Jasmine's assistance, she identified the correct vessel, the actual subclavian artery, approached it from the proper angle, and carefully clamped it. The vascular malformation was repaired meticulously, step by step. 2 hours later, the surgery was complete, successful. Mia would wake up healthy, without stroke, without brain damage, without any idea how close she had come to dying. As the team closed the incision, Dr. Patel caught Jasmine's eye and nodded once. "Thank you." Dr. Klein whispered, "You saved her life." But Whitfield, standing in the corner, had his phone out, texting someone, making calls, already weaponizing his power. Jasmine knew what was coming. She'd saved a child's life. Now she'd have to fight to save her own career.
Jasmine was suspended before she even left the OR. Rebecca Morrison, the charge nurse, was waiting in the scrub room. Dr. Whitfield filed a formal complaint. "You're suspended pending investigation. 2 weeks without pay. Turn in your badge." "I saved that child's life." "You disobeyed a direct order from an attending surgeon during a procedure. That's grounds for termination under hospital policy." "He was about to kill her." "That's your opinion. Dr. Whitfield's statement says you created a hostile work environment, questioned his expertise without cause, and caused dangerous delays during a critical procedure." Jasmine's hands shook as she turned in her badge. "What about Dr. Chen, Dr. Klein, Dr. Patel? They all confirmed I was right." Rebecca's face was stone. "They're being interviewed. Go home, Jasmine. Don't contact anyone on staff. Don't come to the hospital. We'll notify you when the investigation is complete." Jasmine changed out of her scrubs in a bathroom stall, crying silently. 6 years of perfect service, 6 years of being excellent, and it didn't matter. She'd done everything right, and she was being punished for it.
But what Jasmine didn't know was that Sarah Chen had made a decision of her own. As soon as the surgery ended, Sarah went directly to Chief of Surgery Dr. William Harrison's office and requested an emergency meeting. She brought the ultrasound images, the CT scans, and a detailed timeline of exactly what had happened in OR3. Dr. Whitfield nearly killed that patient, said Sarah, and when Nurse Carter tried to stop him, he had her removed. If she hadn't refused to leave, Mia Rodriguez would be brain dead right now. Dr. Harrison, a black man in his 60s, listened carefully. He'd been chief of surgery for 12 years. He knew Whitfield's reputation, the complaints, the whispers, but Whitfield brought in $3 million annually in surgical revenue. He had powerful friends on the hospital board. Touching him was career suicide, but letting him kill patients was worse. I need you to put this in writing, Harrison said, every detail, and I need you to understand that Dr. Whitfield will try to destroy your career. He has allies. Are you prepared for that? Sarah thought about Mia Rodriguez, about what would have happened if Jasmine Carter hadn't been brave enough to speak up. Yes, sir. I'm prepared.
By evening, Jasmine's phone was blowing up, not with support, with threats. Anonymous texts, "You're done in healthcare. You'll never work again." Emails, "Nurses who don't know their place get what they deserve." Social media messages, "Uppity black nurse thinks she knows more than a real doctor. Hope you enjoy unemployment." The hospital staff's private Facebook group had posts supporting Whitfield, calling Jasmine disruptive, insubordinate, the problem with diversity hires. Only 3 people reached out with support. Sarah Chen, "I submitted my statement. Truth matters. Hang in there." Dr. Klein, "I backed you up. Don't quit." And a number she didn't recognize. When she answered, she heard, "Jasmine Carter? Yes? This is Dr. William Harrison, Chief of Surgery. Can we talk?" What happened in that conversation would determine not just Jasmine's future, but whether hospitals would protect nurses who speak up or surgeons who silence them.
Dr. Harrison met Jasmine at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital, neutral ground. He was in civilian clothes, trying not to draw attention. "I've reviewed Dr. Chen's statement," he said, "Dr. Klein's statement, the ultrasound images, the OR logs showing the exact timeline." Jasmine waited, afraid to hope. "Nurse Carter, you were right. Dr. Whitfield was about to clamp the carotid artery. If you hadn't stopped him, Mia Rodriguez would have suffered catastrophic brain damage or death." Relief flooded through her. "Then why am I suspended?" Harrison's face was grim. "Because Dr. Whitfield has filed formal charges against you. Insubordination, creating a hostile work environment, interfering with patient care. He's demanding your termination." "I saved that patient's life." "I know, and I'm going to fight for you. But you need to understand what you're up against." Harrison pulled out his phone, showed her an email chain. "Whitfield has contacted 6 board members, all major donors, all personal friends. He's threatening to leave Metropolitan and take his entire surgical practice to Presbyterian Hospital. That's $3 million in annual revenue." Jasmine's stomach sank. So money matters more than a child's life? To some people, yes. Harrison met her eyes, but not to me. "I'm scheduling a formal hearing for Monday, 3 days from now. The board will hear evidence from both sides. You'll need to defend yourself." Defend myself for saving a patient? Defend yourself for disobeying a direct order from an attending physician. That's how they'll frame it. Harrison leaned forward. "Jasmine, they're going to come at you hard. They'll question your expertise, your judgment, your motives. Whitfield's lawyer is already claiming you have a vendetta against him because of your previous complaint." "The complaint about the surgical sponge he left inside a patient?" "He says that complaint was frivolous, that you're a disgruntled employee with a pattern of disruptive behavior." Jasmine's hands trembled. "This is insane. There were 8 people in that OR. They all saw what happened. And most of them won't testify." Harrison's voice was heavy. "I've spoken to them. The surgical tech is afraid of losing his job. The other nurses are afraid of Whitfield's retaliation. Dr. Patel says he was focused on anesthesia and can't comment on surgical decisions. What about Dr. Chen, Dr. Klein? They're willing to testify, but they're residents. Whitfield's attorney will destroy their credibility, claim they're inexperienced, that they were influenced by your hysteria." Jasmine felt the walls closing in. "So what do I do?" Harrison pulled out a business card. "This is Evelyn Rodriguez, civil rights attorney. She specializes in workplace discrimination. I called her this morning. She's willing to represent you pro bono." "Why would she do that?" "Because Mia Rodriguez is her niece." The world stopped. Mia's mother is Evelyn's sister. The family is devastated that someone nearly killed their little girl and furious that the hospital suspended the nurse who saved her. Evelyn wants blood. Jasmine took the card with shaking hands. "Does she know? Does the family know what really happened?" "Not yet. Hospital privacy rules prevent us from discussing details of the surgery. But after the hearing, when everything becomes public record," Harrison smiled grimly, "Evelyn Rodriguez is going to file the biggest malpractice lawsuit this hospital has ever seen, and Whitfield will be at the center of it." What Harrison didn't anticipate was that someone else in the OR had been recording. Not video,
Audio. Carlos Martinez, the surgical tech, had worn a voice-activated recording device for his own protection. After being blamed for Whitfield's sponge error 3 weeks earlier, Carlos had decided to document everything. He'd captured the entire confrontation in OR 3. That night, Carlos sat in his apartment, listening to the recording over and over. Whitfield's voice. "I said out. Security, remove this nurse immediately." Jasmine's voice. "That's the wrong artery. You're about to clamp the carotid." Sarah Chen's voice. "It's the carotid artery. Nurse Carter is correct." Whitfield's voice. "Dr. Chen, you've just ended your career in vascular surgery. I guarantee it." Carlos knew what he had. Proof. Undeniable, unedited proof of everything that happened. He also knew that releasing it would end his career. Whitfield would have him fired, blacklisted. He'd never work in healthcare again. Carlos looked at the photo on his wall. His daughter, 7 years old, same age as Mia Rodriguez. He thought about what would happen if his daughter was on that table. He uploaded the audio to his computer, created an anonymous email account, and sent the recording to 3 people: Dr. William Harrison, chief of surgery, Evelyn Rodriguez, attorney, and Sarah Mitchell, investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune. By Friday morning, the story broke.
Nurse saves child from surgeon's fatal error, then gets suspended. The Tribune article went live at 6 a.m. By 9 a.m., it had 100,000 views. By noon, 500,000. Sarah Mitchell had done her homework. She'd interviewed Dr. Chen and Dr. Klein off the record. She'd reviewed Whitfield's history, found the 3 nurses of color he'd fired in 2 years. She'd pulled his malpractice history, 4 lawsuits settled quietly. And she had the audio recording. The article included a 45-second clip, Whitfield yelling at Jasmine, Jasmine calmly explaining the error, Sarah Chen confirming the carotid artery, Whitfield threatening to end Chen's career. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. Twitter erupted. #JusticeForJasmine trended nationally within hours. #FireWhitfield followed close behind. A black nurse saves a child's life and gets punished. A white doctor nearly kills a patient and threatens everyone who stopped him. This is American healthcare. Dr. Whitfield should be in prison, not practicing medicine. Every nurse knows this story. Doctors who refuse to listen kill patients, but the nurses get blamed. Medical communities across the country picked up the story. Nursing associations, patient advocacy groups, civil rights organizations. The National Association of Black Nurses released a statement. Jasmine Carter represents everything that is right about nursing, and her suspension represents everything that is wrong with healthcare hierarchies that silence those who speak up. The American Medical Association was silent, so was the American College of Surgeons. By Saturday, protesters gathered outside Metropolitan Children's Hospital, 50 people holding signs, "Nurses save lives, listen to black women, fire Dr. Whitfield." Inside the hospital, chaos reigned. The board held emergency meetings, the PR department went into crisis mode. Donors were calling, some demanding Whitfield be fired, others threatening to pull funding if he was. And Jasmine's phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets, talk shows, podcasts, everyone wanted her story. Evelyn Rodriguez told her not to talk to anyone until after the hearing. "Let them sweat," Evelyn said. "Let the pressure build. By Monday, the board will have no choice but to do the right thing." But Jasmine wasn't so sure. She'd seen how hospitals protected powerful doctors before.
The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the hospital's main conference room. What was supposed to be a quiet administrative proceeding had become a media circus. News vans lined the street, reporters crowded the lobby, hospital security struggled to maintain order. The board expanded the hearing to the hospital auditorium to accommodate the crowd. 200 seats filled within minutes. Cameras lined the back wall. Jasmine walked in with Evelyn Rodriguez. Every eye turned to watch them. She saw her nursing colleagues in the audience. Some gave her thumbs up, others wouldn't make eye contact. She saw Mia Rodriguez's family. Evelyn's sister Carmen, Mia's mother, held a photo of her daughter. When their eyes met, Carmen mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." She saw the media, notebooks out, cameras ready. This would be national news within hours. And she saw Dr. Whitfield sitting at the respondents' table with 3 attorneys, expensive suits, confident smiles. They looked like they'd already won. Board Chair Margaret Thompson called the hearing to order. This is a formal review of the incident that occurred in OR 3 on Wednesday. We will hear testimony from all parties, review evidence, and make a determination regarding Nurse Carter's employment status. Whitfield's lead attorney, Robert Sullivan, stood. Silver-haired, expensive watch, the kind of lawyer who defends the powerful. Thank you, Madam Chair. We will demonstrate that Nurse Carter engaged in a pattern of insubordinate behavior that culminated in her dangerous interference with a surgical procedure. Her actions endangered the patient and created a hostile work environment for Dr. Whitfield. Evelyn Rodriguez stood next, Latina, 40s, sharp eyes. She'd built her reputation destroying institutional racism in healthcare. We will demonstrate that Nurse Carter saved 8-year-old Mia Rodriguez from a fatal medical error, that Dr. Whitfield's ego was more important to him than his patient's life, and that Metropolitan Children's Hospital has a systemic problem protecting powerful doctors while punishing nurses who speak up. The hearing began. Sullivan called Dr. Whitfield to testify first. Dr. Whitfield, please describe what happened in OR 3. Whitfield's performance was masterful, calm, professional, reasonable. I was performing a complex vascular repair. The anatomy was distorted by scar tissue, which made identification challenging. Nurse Carter became agitated and began questioning my surgical judgment loudly and repeatedly. I asked her to step back and allow me to work. She refused and created a scene that disrupted the entire procedure. Did Nurse Carter correctly identify the vessel you were approaching? She made an assertion, but it was based on limited understanding. The ultrasound verification that Dr. Chen performed was standard protocol. I would have ordered it myself before proceeding. A lie, smooth and confident. Did Nurse Carter show a pattern of disruptive behavior? Yes, she filed a frivolous complaint against me 3 weeks ago regarding a routine surgical count. She's been hostile toward me ever since. Sullivan showed Jasmine's personnel file. He pointed to her previous complaints, framing them as evidence of a troublemaker. Then it was Evelyn's turn to cross-examine. Dr. Whitfield, you stated you would have ordered ultrasound verification before proceeding. Is that correct?
Yes. Then why didn't you order it when Nurse Carter first raised the concern? Because she didn't raise it professionally. She became hysterical. Evelyn played the audio recording. Jasmine's voice, calm and clear. Dr. Whitfield, please look at the scan. The vessel you're approaching is the carotid. Whitfield's voice, I said, be quiet. One more word and you're out of here, permanently. The room erupted in murmurs. The board members exchanged glances. Dr. Whitfield, does that sound like hysteria to you? Whitfield's jaw tightened. She was questioning my expertise in front of my team. She was preventing a fatal error. There's a difference. Evelyn pulled up the ultrasound images on the screen. Dr. Chen confirmed that you were approaching the carotid artery, not the subclavian, correct? The anatomy was distorted. Yes or no, Dr. Whitfield, were you approaching the wrong artery? Silence. Then, in retrospect, yes. And if you had clamped that artery, what would have happened to Mia Rodriguez? Objection, Sullivan said. Speculation. I'll rephrase. Dr. Whitfield, what happens when you clamp the carotid artery? Whitfield's voice was barely audible. It cuts off blood flow to the brain. And how long does it take for irreversible brain damage to occur? 30 to 90 seconds. So, if Nurse Carter hadn't stopped you, Mia Rodriguez would have suffered catastrophic brain damage or death. Is that correct? Whitfield looked at his lawyers. They nodded for him to answer. Possibly. Not possibly, doctor. Definitely. Nurse Carter saved that child's life. Evelyn turned to the board.
And for saving a child's life, this hospital suspended her without pay, while Dr. Whitfield, who nearly killed a patient through gross negligence, continues to practice medicine. The hearing continued for 4 hours. Dr. Sarah Chen testified, walking the board through the exact anatomy, showing why Jasmine was right. Dr. Klein testified about the CT scan misinterpretation. Carlos Martinez, shaking with fear, admitted he made the recording. "I wore the device because I was blamed for Dr. Whitfield's mistake 3 weeks ago. I needed to protect myself." The board took a 30-minute recess to deliberate. Those 30 minutes felt like hours. Finally, Margaret Thompson returned to the podium. "We have reviewed all evidence and testimony. We have reached our decision." The room went silent. First, regarding Nurse Jasmine Carter, the evidence clearly shows that she acted appropriately under patient safety protocols. She identified a critical error, reported it through proper channels, and persisted even when ordered to stop. Her actions saved a patient's life. The suspension is hereby overturned. Nurse Jasmine is reinstated immediately with full back pay and a formal apology from this institution. Applause erupted. Carmen Rodriguez was crying. Jasmine's nursing colleagues cheered. But Thompson wasn't finished. Second, regarding Dr. Marcus Whitfield, the evidence shows a pattern of dangerous behavior, retaliation against staff who report safety concerns, and an incident that nearly resulted in patient death. Effective immediately, Dr. Marcus Whitfield is suspended from all surgical privileges pending a full medical board investigation. Whitfield shot to his feet. "This is outrageous! I have rights!" "You have the right to appeal," Thompson interrupted. "But until the medical board completes its investigation, you will not touch another patient in this hospital." Security moved toward Whitfield as he continued to protest. Thompson's final words rang through the auditorium. "This hospital exists to protect patients, not to protect doctors' egos. Today, we chose patients, and we will continue to choose patients every single time." The room exploded in applause. Jasmine sat frozen, unable to believe it was over. Evelyn squeezed her hand. "You won." But as Jasmine watched Whitfield being escorted out, his face red with rage, she knew this wasn't really over. Men like Whitfield didn't just accept defeat. They got revenge.
Within 48 hours, Dr. Marcus Whitfield resigned from Metropolitan Children's Hospital. His statement was brief and bitter. "I can no longer practice medicine in an environment where political correctness trumps surgical excellence." Within a week, 3 other hospitals rejected his applications for surgical privileges. The story had gone too viral. No hospital wanted the liability. Within 2 weeks, the Medical Board of Illinois launched a formal investigation into Whitfield's entire career. They found 7 other incidents where his judgment had been questioned, 3 near misses, 2 patient deaths that had been quietly settled. Within a month, Whitfield's medical license was suspended pending further review. The system that had protected him for 25 years finally held him accountable. Not because administrators suddenly cared about safety, because Jasmine Carter refused to be silent.
Jasmine stood in the auditorium of Metropolitan Children's Hospital, addressing 300 nurses from across the city. She'd been invited to speak at the National Nurses Safety Conference. "6 months ago, I made a choice," she began. "I could stay silent and watch a child die, or I could speak up and risk everything. I chose to speak up." She looked out at the crowd, so many faces like hers, black, brown, women, people who'd been told to know their place. "What I learned is that silence protects the system, not the patients. When we stay quiet because we're afraid, people die, and the doctors who hurt them face no consequences." She clicked to her next slide, statistics. Every year, 250,000 patients die from medical errors. That's the 3rd leading cause of death in America. How many of those deaths could be prevented if nurses felt safe speaking up? The room was silent, listening. After my case went public, I received 1,247 messages from nurses across the country. Every single one told me about a time they saw something wrong and stayed silent because they were afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of being labeled difficult, afraid of retaliation. She clicked again. Photos of nurses. Black, white, Asian, Latina. These are the nurses who spoke up, who reported safety concerns, who questioned doctors' orders when something seemed wrong. Another click. These are the same nurses 6 months later. Fired, blacklisted, forced out of healthcare. The room erupted in murmurs of recognition. The system is designed to silence us, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be this way. Jasmine outlined the new policies Metropolitan had implemented. Anonymous safety reporting systems, mandatory review of all nurse concerns within 24 hours, protection from retaliation for patient safety advocacy, nurses included on medical board reviews, transparency requirements for all surgical errors. She paused. They happened because we refused to be silent anymore.
Jasmine stood in the auditorium of Metropolitan Children's Hospital, addressing 300 nurses from across the city. She'd been invited to speak at the National Nurses Safety Conference. 6 months ago, I made a choice, she began. I could stay silent and watch a child die, or I could speak up and risk everything. I chose to speak up. She looked out at the crowd, so many faces like hers, black, brown, women, people who'd been told to know their place. What I learned is that silence protects the system, not the patients. When we stay quiet because we're afraid, people die, and the doctors who hurt them face no consequences. She clicked to her next slide. Statistics. Every year, 250,000 patients die from medical errors. That's the third leading cause of death in America. How many of those deaths could be prevented if nurses felt safe speaking up? The room was silent, listening. After my case went public, I received 1,247 messages from nurses across the country. Every single one told me about a time they saw something wrong and stayed silent because they were afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of being labeled difficult, afraid of retaliation. She clicked again. Photos of nurses. Black, white, Asian, Latina. These are the nurses who spoke up, who reported safety concerns, who questioned doctors' orders when something seemed wrong. Another click. These are the same nurses 6 months later, fired, blacklisted, forced out of healthcare. The room erupted in murmurs of recognition. The system is designed to silence us, but I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to be this way. Jasmine outlined the new policies Metropolitan had implemented. Anonymous safety reporting systems, mandatory review of all nurse concerns within 24 hours, protection from retaliation for patient safety advocacy, nurses included on medical board reviews, transparency requirements for all surgical errors. These changes didn't happen because administration suddenly cared. They happened because the story went viral, because patients' families demanded better, because lawyers like Evelyn Rodriguez filed lawsuits that cost millions. She paused. They happened because we refused to be silent anymore. After the conference, a young black nurse approached Jasmine. She couldn't have been more than 23, fresh out of nursing school. "Miss Carter, I start my first OR rotation next week. I'm terrified." Jasmine understood. "Because you might see something wrong?" "Because I might not be brave enough to speak up." Jasmine took both her hands. "Listen to me. Bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you're terrified. You will see something wrong. Every nurse does. And when that moment comes, you'll have a choice." The young nurse's eyes filled with tears. "Choose the patient," Jasmine said. "Every single time. Choose the patient over your fear, over your job, over the system that tells you to be quiet." "What if I lose everything?" "Then you'll still have your integrity and the knowledge that you saved a life." The young nurse nodded, wiped her eyes. "Thank you." As she walked away, Jasmine thought about Mia Rodriguez. She'd visited Mia last month. The little girl was completely recovered, back in school, playing soccer, living the life she almost lost. Mia didn't remember anything about the surgery, didn't know how close she'd come to death. But her mother knew. And every time Carmen Rodriguez saw Jasmine, she hugged her and whispered the same words. "You gave me my daughter back." That was worth everything. Worth the suspension, worth the threats, worth the fear. Worth it all. 1 year later.
The Metropolitan Children's Hospital Board of Directors called a special meeting. They were announcing new leadership. Dr. William Harrison was being promoted to hospital president, and they'd created a new position, Chief Nursing Officer, with full voting power on the medical board. The first person to hold that position would be Jasmine Carter. When they offered her the job, Jasmine had laughed. "A year ago, you suspended me for doing the right thing. Now you want me to lead?" Harrison smiled. "A year ago, we were protecting the wrong people. You taught us better. Will you accept?" Jasmine thought about all the nurses who'd reached out, all the stories of being silenced, all the patients who died because someone was too afraid to speak up. "I accept, but I have conditions." "Name them." "Every nurse in this hospital gets safety training. Every nurse knows they have the right to stop a procedure if they see danger, and any retaliation against nurses who speak up results in immediate termination, no exceptions." "Done." "Including doctors?" Harrison didn't hesitate, especially doctors. On her first day as CNO, Jasmine walked through the surgical wing. She saw nurses who'd supported her, saw some who hadn't. She stopped at OR 3, the room where everything had changed. She thought about Dr. Whitfield. His medical license had been permanently revoked 3 months ago. He moved to Montana, was working as a medical consultant, no longer touching patients. She thought about Sarah Chen, now a fully credentialed vascular surgeon. Sarah called her once a month to say thank you. She thought about Carlos Martinez, the surgical tech who'd made the recording. He'd been promoted to OR supervisor. And she thought about all the Mia Rodriguezes out there, all the patients who would never know they'd been saved because a nurse refused to be silent. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "I'm a nurse in Atlanta. I just stopped a doctor from giving the wrong blood type. He yelled at me. Security came, but I didn't back down. I thought about you. Thank you for showing us how." Jasmine smiled and typed back, "You saved that patient's life. Never apologize for that. Never stop speaking up." Because that's what it was really about. Not her story, not her victory, but the chain reaction, the ripple effect. Every nurse who saw what happened and thought, if Jasmine Carter can stand up to Dr. Whitfield, I can stand up too. That was the real change. Not policy, not politics, not procedures. People choosing courage over comfort, choosing patience over protocol, choosing to speak up when every instinct screamed to stay quiet.
2 years after the incident in OR 3, Jasmine was invited to testify before Congress. The Healthcare Safety and Accountability Act was being debated. It would create federal protections for healthcare workers who report safety concerns. She sat at the witness table, facing senators, cameras broadcasting live to millions. "My name is Jasmine Carter. I'm a nurse, and 2 years ago, I saved a child's life by refusing to be silent." She told me a story, told about Whitfield's retaliation, told about the system designed to protect powerful doctors over vulnerable patients. "This isn't about one bad doctor," she concluded. "It's about a culture that values hierarchy over safety, that punishes nurses for being right, that protects egos over lives." She looked directly at the camera. Every day, nurses across this country see things that could harm patients, and every day they have to choose between speaking up and keeping their jobs. No healthcare worker should ever have to make that choice. The bill passed 87-13. President signed it into law 6 months later. The Jasmine Carter Healthcare Safety Act created federal whistleblower protections for all healthcare workers, made retaliation a federal crime, required transparent reporting of all medical errors. It saved lives, thousands of them. Nurses who would have stayed silent spoke up. Patients who would have died survived. All because one nurse in one OR refused to watch a child die.
Jasmine's office at Metropolitan now overlooked the same parking lot where protesters had gathered 2 years ago. The signs were gone, the news vans had moved on. But the change remained. Her desk held 3 items: her nursing license, a photo of Mia Rodriguez, healthy and smiling, and a framed quote she'd written herself. "Excellence without courage is useless. Expertise without advocacy is meaningless. Being right matters nothing if you're too afraid to speak up." Medical students toured her office now. Nursing students interviewed her. Everyone wanted to know, how did you find the courage? Jasmine's answer was always the same. "I didn't find courage.
I found something more important than my fear, an 8-year-old girl who deserved to live. And that was the lesson, the real story. Not that Jasmine Carter was special, not that she was braver than anyone else, but that in the moment it mattered most, she chose right over easy. She chose the patient's life over her career. She chose truth over silence, and that choice changed everything. If you've ever been told to stay quiet when you saw something wrong, this story is for you. If you've ever been punished for doing the right thing, this story is for you. If you've ever wondered whether one person can really make a difference, this story is for you. Share this if you believe healthcare workers should be protected for speaking up. Comment below if you've ever had to choose between your job and someone's safety. Subscribe for more stories where courage wins and silence loses. Because Jasmine Carter proved something that every nurse, every healthcare worker, every person who's ever been told to know their place needs to hear. Your voice matters. Your expertise matters. And when you speak up to save a life, you're not being insubordinate. You're being a hero.